You're live.
Now, to connect with the other schools, don't go away. That'll be real nice if I can remember.
That I should, if I grab my sheet.
I should have the enrollment.
Are you multi-point?
Oh, yeah.
Was, Jamestown only in, or was only Dunkirk?
Not Dunkirk. Oh, yeah, Olean.
Just
Oh,
only?
no, take that back. Okay. This is going to be 116 and 227.
So just the blue one.
Oh, okay. That was easy.
Yeah. So what's going on here is he's sharing, he's connecting with the other sites at Jamestown Olean, and then we are having some other students that are connecting remotely. So this camera is recording that screen live for YouTube.
Yes, we have 3 campuses and 2 remote students, which is why whatever I do is being filmed. That's why it takes several minutes to get in here.
But not too bad. You did actually very well.
Well, you were here too, so.
But you did it all, so
Yeah,
congratulations.
I know it, but it was faster because I kept looking at this. You said, well, do that, but now don't go away.
Okay.
Because when I put stuff on the document camera, I assume that's just going to show up and, you know.
Yes, well, yeah, whatever you share to the screen here, that's what it'll fill out.
Okay, I just want to try it while everybody's still here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And of course, that way too, the remote people get it.
Yep, you'll just need the power button on the dot cam. And then you'll just need to put the dot cam on there.
Like always.
Like always.
Yep. It's interesting that here it shows right, but here it shows backwards.
And that's okay, Greg. I've already shown that it will report correctly.
So when the students look at it, they'll see it the right way.
Right.
Yeah, and when I look at it, I'll just look here and there.
That's
Yeah, so the best
fascinating.
thing to do is just minimize that screen, and that way you won't be distracted by it.
Oh,
After a while, I'll forget it's even there.
Okay. Very good.
All right, I think we're okay.
looking good.
Thank you.
Just don't trip over the wires.
Okay, most important thing?
Here's the phone.
All right, have a great class.
Thank you.
Yes, if you're religious, pray for me.
Will do.
If you're not, send me positive thoughts.
Good vibes.
Or if you're a witch, do a spell or
All the above.
all of them. Thank you. Is there confusion? Or?
Yeah. What is this class?
This is the honors class on Palestine.
That's weird, because my schedule says at 11 I'm supposed to be in this room.
Child development?
Yeah.
You've been moved. There's a sign on the door.
Sorry.
That's all right. First class, that's not unusual. Sometimes I go to the wrong room, so. So I assume in Olean and Dunkirk, you can see and hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Good. And then typically I always check with the screen to make sure you can see it okay. Again, this is somewhat complicated because we're doing this in Jamestown, Olean, Dunkirk, and then the reason we have to go through an elaborate system with a camera is because we have 2 remote students who are in honors, and they're going to be viewing these. I don't know if any of them are going to actually view this YouTube live, although we are live. And I I guess it gets saved so that you can look at it at any time. If you ask me how to do that, I have no idea. I think they get notified on Blackboard how to do it. But it's somewhat complicated because if I count them, then we basically have 4 sites. So I have to go through this elaborate song and dance at the beginning with the camera and everything else. If anybody is comfortable, if for some reason you get here before me and you want to set up the camera, it's pretty simple. For our Jamestown friends, there's markers. You just have to extend it and extend this. Make sure it's pointed at that. And then at the end, I just take it all down. So, but we're going to have to do this every single class, which probably will start to make me start grading that, but also it should become easier. But, so we'll see. So, anybody else here for child development? Because if you are, I can't do that. I know nothing about how children develop other than my own story, if I remember that far back.
Yeah. Like for the class.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm here for like.
This is the Palestine Honors class.
Oh, where's the child development class?
There's a sign out there. Anybody else here for child development? So you guys at Olean and Dunkirk are in the honors class? Is that a yes or? Somebody say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Somebody asked me why there were no men in this class, and well, there would be, and I didn't have an answer. Anybody have an answer? Men don't care about Palestine? Because even the remote students are female,
Right.
Which is really interesting to me. So, I don't know what explains it. Maybe you guys can explain it. There's got to be men who are honor students, right? Except I have 2 students doing an honors project with me, and they're both female too. Maybe the men just can't hack it. Anyways, let me go through the role. If you would tell me what kind of degree you're working on, what you think you might do after you leave us, and then a fun fact. Fun fact of the animals, children, jobs, hobbies. 9 o'clock, somebody told me they ski, somebody told me they draw, somebody told me they read. There wasn't anything else. Somebody told me they were afraid of spiders. Could be anything. So let's start with Dunkirk. It's Madison Mott.
Yeah.
Can you tell us your story?
My major is psychology, and I work at Walmart.
What do you do at Walmart?
I'm a cashier.
Do you like that, or is it boring?
Kind of repetitive.
Yeah. But it's a job.
Yeah.
What do you think you're going to do after you leave us?
Continue going to school.
Do you know
I
what?
don't know.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't have like a plan for what exactly I want to do yet, but I know I want to continue with psychology.
okay. Maybe at Fredonia or someplace else.
Yeah, probably for Downey.
Okay, well, then you could stay at Walmart.
Yeah.
I always curse the Walmart up there. I curse Walmart in general, but when I'm driving down the road trying to get to the thruway, and that signal changes and stops me, so the Kmart or the Walmart customers don't get in and out, I sit there and mutter under my breath. It's nothing against you. It's just that if you want to go to Walmart, fine, but don't stop me on the road. But that's not your fault. Okay, let's go to Olean. How about Carolyn Krenzel?
My name is Carolyn Krenzel. I am a mathematics major.
after I finish my degree for engineering.
Oh, engineering, where do you want to go?
I've looked at a couple of places in state and out of state, I can't decide.
Okay. Do you have a fun fact?
I have a cat.
What's your cat's name?
Name's Coconut.
What is it?
Coconut.
Male or female?
He's a boy, but not a white cat. Everyone thinks he's a white cat. And they think so.
And how long have you had Polka Dot?
Maybe 7 years, I don't remember. A long time ago.
I have two cats at home, Oliver and Ziva. I've had them for 3 years. They got them at the Humane Society. And it's interesting, in Palestine, there are cats all over the place, pretty much just took over and feel right at home. Because I kept running into cats, and of course, I always said hello to all of them. They're quite comfortable there, or they're laying on top of the roofs of buildings soaking in the sun. And then in every mosque I've ever been in, whether it's in Palestine or in Turkey, there's always a mosque cat. And the cat just roams through the mosque freely, even during prayers. And it's fun to watch people, they're down on their knees and their heads down, and they're praying, and the cat bumps up to them, and they're always petting the cat. So I like cats. How about Tanisha Sprester, is it?
Yep. My name is Tanisha. I am actually in individual studies right now. I want to go for forensics.
Oh, I'm sorry, for what?
Transferring forensics.
Okay,
I plan on transferring to probably Pitt grad. And an interesting fact about me is I graduated from Allegheny Limestone, Carolyn.
where did you graduate from?
Allegheny Limestone.
Oh, now why is that a fun fact?
I don't know, I don't have any fun. I work at a pizza place.
Okay. Let's go to Jamestown, Olivia Brooks.
I'm Olivia, human services major, and after this, I'll probably go to an online school, but long term, I want to be a family social worker. And right now, I work at the Boys and Girls Club in Jamestown.
Oh, okay, that's a good group. And Cassandra Kelly?
I'm Cassie. I am an individual studies major right now. I'm hoping to transfer at the end of the semester and go for a history degree. Fun fact, I started scuba diving last year.
Where do you go scuba diving?
I haven't been many places, but I went to a quarry up in Canada, and I can't remember the other place, but I just started, so I haven't been too many places.
Is there any aspect of history that interests you more than others?
I like ancient civilizations.
Yeah.
I really like Greek and Romans, and I love mythology.
Okay. And how about Hannah Scholl?
I'm an individual studies major. I'm undecided, so I don't know what I'm doing after JCC. And fun fact, I'm on the soccer team here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I'm retiring in December of 21, and I'm not sure what I want to do after. So if you got any advice, let me know. How about Megan Sapir?
That's me.
Did I get your last name right?
Yes. I am currently finishing up my second degree at JCC. It's an English degree. I plan on becoming a secretary for like actual work after graduation.
For who work? What?
For actual work, like to be in the world. But then my fun fact is that I'm currently working on my second novel, and that's like what I'd like to do is be a published
You be a
author.
writer rather than a secretary?
Yes.
Oh, you can do both.
Yes. Secretary will pay the bills though. So.
Yeah. How about Isabella Serma? Your small story?
What was that?
Your story?
I'm studying math and science right now, and I want to go into veterinary medicine. And then, I'm thinking about going to Freeland after my bachelor's in biology, and then I don't know where to go for vet school, but, fun fact is that I like to play tennis.
Okay, great. Now, for my friends in Olean and Dunkirk, the syllabus should be in the folder on the wall. Did you get a chance to look?
Yeah.
Do you all have it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, give me a moment to give it out here. Hope they don't trip over wires, cameras.
Thank you.
So I've been JCC a very long time. I'm the second longest serving full-time faculty member on the Jamestown campus. I've been here 34 years. I had intended to stay for a couple of years and leave, and then I found that I liked it, and obviously stayed, in part because Jamestown Community College, sometimes because I put pressure on them, allows me to do all kinds of things that I'm not sure I could do anyplace else. And I do know for a fact that among community colleges, Jamestown Community College is quite unique. We do things that most community colleges simply do not do. And I'm a professor of political science, but I teach government law. So I teach American politics, world politics, and I teach a lot of law classes, especially business law. And have an interest in the world, obviously. I've had the chance to study in other countries, and also study different cultures here in the United States, and an East Asian fellowship to study, obviously, East Asia at Columbia, a fellowship to study the Holocaust at Northwestern. I'm starting to forget every place I went. And then also had a opportunity to go and study in Palestine, which is how my interest in Palestine came about. I already knew stuff about Palestine, but I didn't really understand it until not only did I get the grant to go, I was the first community college professor chosen to go, and had to do all the reading before I went. And then, of course, I was only there for 2 weeks, but I went to 5 Palestinian universities and made connections. And I have to say it was one of those life-changing experiences. I've also made a particular study of Islam, not that all Palestinians are Muslims, but quite a few of them are. And so I had a grant to study Islam in New Mexico at an Islamic center, and I've gone to Turkey to study it, and often lecture on Islam as someone who's not a Muslim. Although I always joke that the reason I'm not a Muslim is because it's just too difficult. I couldn't handle Ramadan and praying 5 times a day. Muslims are better people than me, so, but I have Muslim friends because of this. So my interest is very global, which I think is appropriate to this class. And I have a deep understanding, I hope, and appreciation for Palestine and Palestinians. And when I proposed this to the college, they were willing to do it, and I was glad because while I enjoy everything I get to do, this for me to a great extent is very much a labor of love. It's been a few years since I've been in Palestine. People keep asking me if I'm going to go back, and I said I'm not quite ready to go back for lots of different reasons. It's a difficult place to be right now, has been for quite some time, but it's fascinating to be able to read about it and then to go and personally experience it. Now, has anyone been to the Middle East among you? So if no one's been to the Middle East, I guess I wouldn't ask you if you've been to Palestine. Anybody have any kind of connection to the Middle East, either because of family or religion, or, I mean, again, I'm not asking you to tell me your life story, but and it's private too, but anybody have, oh, yes. Anolia?
I have a cousin. I have a cousin who works over there.
Oh, what did your cousin do?
She's a high school teacher.
And she taught in a school in Palestine? Did she, how long was she there?
I think she's still over there.
Oh.
This will be like second or third year.
Do you know where in Palestine she is?
No, but I remember her talking about crossing over into the Israeli side, so it's somewhere on the border, I think.
Well, yeah, that's a relatively compact part of the world. So you can get to different places pretty easily. Are you in contact with her at all?
No, not me personally. She like writes letters to the family in general.
Oh.
Every now and then.
Do you ever get to see
It's
the
all
letters?
like, not really. The last time I saw her was last Christmas, and the last time she sent a letter was last month. Not.
Oh, okay, because I was just wondering if you had her email address, if you could talk to her about what's going on over there.
I could probably ask her.
Okay. Anybody else have any kind of connection to the Middle East or Palestine? Okay, well then, you're probably relatively blank slates, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean maybe you haven't thought about it, or maybe you've seen things in the news. Typically, if I have time before I give out the syllabus, I always say, tell me in one word how you would describe Palestine, because it's interesting to see people's perspective on that. But if you turn to the syllabus, let's take a look at that. The best way to communicate with me is you can see my email address there. I try to check my email every day, including sometimes on the weekends. But certainly if you're in class, the best way is to communicate here. But then if you can't, if for some reason you miss or you need something outside of class, just email me. And don't go through Blackboard, just use the direct email address that you see right here on the syllabus. I put it right on top. So the course is designed to enable students to discover and explore the geography, history, economics, culture, and religion of Palestine as the Palestinian people as a key to understanding the Middle East and its connections to larger world issues at the meeting point of three continents, Africa, Asia, and Europe, and the starting point of the three Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Most of my students, especially in Jamestown, if they have a religion or were brought up in a religious background, are almost always Christian. Occasionally I'll get a Muslim or a Jewish student, but it's rare, and certainly I don't ask you to reveal that unless you want to, because you notice that I point out that there are two connections there. I do have a map of Palestine that I use all the time, but even if you just get a chance to look at a world map, you will see that basically Africa, Asia, and Europe all connect in that particular point in a relatively small geographical area, which is sometimes why when you look at that part of the world and you see conflict, it's because you have three major cultures conflicting at one spot. And hopefully you're paying attention to the world, and recently the United States killed that Iranian general, which has gotten the Iranians pretty upset because we basically, under the orders of the president, assassinated somebody, which really we shouldn't be doing. I would argue that's illegal, but you'll have to work that out with your president. But when you have three different continents and three different cultures, Africa, Asia, and Europe, all coming together in one spot, it's one of my explanations for why there's conflict in that part of the world, and also why it could spread so fast, because it's basically all of the Eastern Hemisphere. It's the meeting point of three different cultures. But then there's also the thing that they have in common. Again, I don't know how religious you are. I was raised a Catholic, not really a Catholic anymore, but because of my education, I didn't see public school until graduate school. And basically, I was educated by the Jesuits, which, like, for me, it was the best education I could have gotten, because you're taught to question everything. And it's always fascinating to me, because I get students here who say to me, how come you never answer questions? You always answer with a question. And then I started to realize it was because that's the way the Jesuits educate you. You also, I went to law school, and you never answer a question if you go to law school. So if you ask me a question, there are times when I will answer you, so don't panic and say, well, he's not going to answer questions. It's just, it's a mode of teaching, where you just keep probing over and over and over again. And so, again, I don't know how much all of you know about religion, but Christianity, Islam, and Judaism all have the same roots. And there's a lot more that's the same among the three of them than there is that's different. So they all come out of the same part of the world, the same source. And because they come out of a desert culture, I don't know how familiar you are with either the Protestant or the Catholic Bible, but I'm familiar with the Old Testament, the New Testament, both versions. I have my own Quran, and there's something very striking similar about the three religions that has something to do with the geography of that area. What would you think is scarce in that part of the world? I'll give you a clue. It's the exact opposite of here. What do you think is scarce?
Water.
Water. So what you notice in the Bible, the Catholic, the Protestant, the Old Testament, the Quran, they're always talking about water. Water becomes essential. I mean, if some of you may have been baptized. I was, as a little boy. I was there. I don't remember it. But what happens when you get baptized? For us who are Christian, yes.
You're like pre-washed of any sins that you do in life.
And what do they do physically at the baptism?
They pour water on your head.
Pour water on you, or in some Christian sects, you actually, like, if you ever seen Big Fat Greek Wedding, or what's his name had to convert, they submerged him in the water. According to the Bible, what was one of the miracles Jesus did?
Baptized.
Well, but what did he converted something into something?
Water into wine.
Water into wine. What did Moses do when he was leading his people out of Israel?
He parted the Red Sea.
He parted the water in the Red Sea. If you've seen that old movie from the 50s, which is kind of hokey but still good, about the Ten Commandments, what's one of the things that Moses does with his staff to get the Pharaoh to let him go? What does he do? What makes the Egyptians panic?
Does he turn into a snake?
Well, it does, but what did he do with the staff? He pointed at something and turned it from one thing into another.
Turning the water into blood.
Turned water into blood, and that freaked them out, because in that part of the world, water is desperately short. They don't get a lot of rain. They don't have a lot of underground water. And then what's the name of that sea over there that implies that it's not living? The Dead Sea. Now, I've been to the Dead Sea. It's dead because it's salt water. So you certainly can't drink it. What's fascinating about the Dead Sea is you can float without any kind of device, which is a little scary when you do it for the first time, because I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'4", 220 pounds. And they said, oh no, the water, it's so salty, it'll hold you up. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to a shallow part, because I was a little scared. So I slowly laid back, And there I am in the Dead Sea, and my body is floating without any kind of device. And some people are floating way out, which I didn't really want to do, even though I could swim back, because when it was time for me to get out, that it's so full of salt that when I tried to put my legs down, I couldn't get them down. I would push them down and the water would push them right back up again. So I literally had to paddle all the way to the shore before I felt like I could stand up, and there it's really muddy. So what you see, one of the things that ties these three religions together is water becomes an extremely important symbol in all of these religions. You know, and you can get into the belief systems, which is a separate issue, but it's water, water, water. And it's certainly part of the religions, and it's part of that world. There is a water shortage to a great extent, so that water becomes a key element. So we have something that causes conflict when you have three different continental cultures coming together, but they're often in conflict over three different religions, which I would argue, having studied all three, that they have more in common than not in common. And I have Christian friends, Muslim friends, Jewish relatives, so I sort of hang out with all of them and enjoy all of them, even though I don't really know any Hebrew or any Arabic. I know a couple of things, but always feel very welcome every place I go. So students will be expected to develop and demonstrate an understanding of this complex, fascinating, and at times volatile part of the world in order to arrive at visible policy proposals and solutions in the interest of social justice, transitional, retributive, and restorative justice, to the conflicts which have been a part of this world for far too long, conflicts which flare up into regional wars and potentially larger wars involving the major powers. So I'm looking at this part of the world more than just a place of conflict, but to a great extent, conflict, you could argue, was inevitable when you have three continental cultures and three worldwide religions all starting from this tiny little spot. There's bound to be conflict, and then the bigger world, the United States, Russia, are involved there. Because who's America's number one ally in the Middle East? Which country? I'll take a sip of my lukewarm coffee. Who's our number one ally? Americans are supposed to know this because you spend an awful lot of your taxpayer money over there. It's the number one recipient of our foreign aid, billions of dollars every year. Who do we prop up? Somebody take a guess.
Iran?
No, they're our enemy. We just killed their general, and they're quite angry with us. And even when, before that, United States deliberately offset Iran against Iraq to try to control them. That was part of the problem with killing Saddam Hussein. We got rid of an evil dictator, but then Iran took control of that part of the world. So it's really kind of stupid for us to get rid of them. It does begin with an I, so who's our number one ally?
India?
No, in the Middle East. That would be considered a subcontinent, South Asia.
Israel?
Israel. Do you know who the current prime minister is, Mr. Netanyahu, who is somewhat like President Trump, and that they're not moving to impeach him because they don't have that in their system. But he's been convicted of all sorts of crime, well, not convicted, excuse me, indicted, and has been requesting immunity from the courts. So President Trump has been impeached. There's no doubt about it, which impeach means to indict. So this president has been found liable and has to go on a trial before the Senate. Benjamin Netanyahu, who is #1 buddy of President Trump, has been indicted on crimes, all kinds of crimes, and has said that because he's prime minister, he's immune, and therefore he wants it to be put off until he's out of office. That you can't indict the prime minister. And President Trump has said, if I do it, and President Nixon said this, if I do it as president, then it's not wrong. Well, quite frankly, they're both wrong. But Israel is our #1 ally. And does Israel have nuclear weapons? Yes, they're heavily armed with nuclear weapons. And this might be even harder. Who's Russia's #1 ally, where they've had a brutal civil war where thousands of people have been killed and probably still being killed today? Which country is locked in a civil war? That is Russia's #1 ally. If you can get Israel, this would be even harder. It begins with an S.
Siberia?
Say what?
Siberia?
No, that's up in Russia. This is down in the Middle East.
Sudan?
No, Sudan's down in Africa. It's a Middle Eastern country.
My goodness.
Say what?
My goodness.
I think we're all going to have to look at a map. I think it's time for me to haul out the map. It would be helpful if you looked at a map, because I probably have some maps in these books, like we'll get to in a moment, but one of them is the history of the Middle East. This is a pretty thick book, but if you're not that familiar with the Middle East, this is an excellent book. I know at the Jamestown bookstore we have copies. I don't know how much they cost. And you probably can get these cheaper at other places. And it should be on the syllabus. I just borrowed mine from our library here. But this is considered probably to be the best book on the Middle East in general, which also obviously includes Palestine and Israel. But let me see if he has those illustrations. If you don't know the history of this part of the world, this is a great book. Yeah, I just, let me see if I can make that bigger. If you look at this particular map, this says the Middle East in the interwar period, which would be between World War I and World War II. If you look at the map, Syria, where my finger is pointing, is Russia's #1 ally in the Middle East. If you look at this map between World War I and World War II, what appears to be missing? What's missing? Say what?
Soviet Union.
I didn't catch that. What? Can you just speak up a little bit?
Yes, Soviet Union.
Well, no, the Soviet Union's right here. Because it existed between World War I and World War II. But if you look at this, the Middle East, as I'm describing it, is this relatively small area. If you look at that map at the end of the Mediterranean Sea, what appears to be missing? what country doesn't appear to be there?
Israel,
Israel. And why is that?
it wasn't made until after World War II.
Yeah, Israel doesn't come into existence until 1948. So when I look at this map, notice how they describe that part of the world. They describe it as Palestine, which is an ancient name going way back. The idea of that part of the world being called Israel dates from the late 40s after World War II. So historically, that part of the world has always been called Palestine. So we will get into this, but Israel basically was imposed on top of Palestine. So Palestine was always there. Israel's not even 100 years old. So because there seemed to be some geographic challenge here, I wanted to make sure we looked at the map. And you can see that Iraq and Iran are quite large and further removed. We're primarily looking at this very tiny part of the world. And I know the time's going to get away from me without me even reviewing the syllabus. So if you look at the course objectives, it says, as a result of successfully completing this course, students will be able to explain what Palestine is and who the Palestinians are, including the 3 dimensions of Palestinian identity. Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir, she's since passed away, was famous for saying there's no such thing as a Palestinian people. With all due respect to Mrs. Meir, I have to point out that there indeed are, and in fact, I've talked to them. So if we look at the syllabus, there's 3 different ways to understand Palestinian identity. Homeland, where 3 religions originate and 3 continents meet. We've already talked about that. National, religious, and secular approaches. And then C, the particularly complex one, the international one, including Palestine's contributions to the world. I don't know if you're familiar with the word diaspora, but it refers to people who have left their point of origin and have spread either throughout the country or throughout the world. There's a Jewish diaspora because Jews are found all over. There is a Palestinian diaspora that people aren't familiar with, but there's Palestinians all over. And you know, one of my favorite one, which is a local one, because Buffalo tanked so badly starting in the 1990s, there's literally a so-called Buffalo diaspora where you will find Buffalonians literally all over the United States because they have to leave because Buffalo is in such bad shape. I'm only 75 miles away, but I was born and raised in Buffalo. I'm part of that diaspora. But you go down to Washington or Texas, there's thousands of ex-Buffalonians. It's fascinating. And then it talks about the world's influence on Palestine. Nakba, that's an Arabic word that means the catastrophe. There should have been a quotation at the end of it. But we'll be talking about the Nakba. This is still under course objectives. Describe the double helix of the dueling narratives, 2 sides of the same coin. The dominant Zionist colonial settlers, I'll explain all of that. This is one of their famous phrases, people for a land without people. The people for a land are the Jewish diaspora that returns to what they consider their homeland based on biblical claims for the land of Palestine, which according to the myth, there were no people there. This people for a land without people is the most famous Zionist phrase ever. It's used to justify the creation of the Israeli state at the expense of the Palestinian people. And then emerging, Palestinian natives and the Nakba, again, you can't get away from that, the catastrophe. An attempt to create a single narrative at best, or at least an understanding of both sides by exposing each side to the narrative of the other. So there are what I call dueling narratives. The dominant narrative, which is the Israeli narrative, and then there's the one that's subservient, unfortunately, which is the Palestinian narrative. There are basically two ways to explain that part of the world, and they tend to be diametrically opposed. It's clear to me, at least, that I'm biased in one sense. I have problems with the dominant Zionist narrative, which then gets people to accuse me of being anti-Semitic, which I'm not, simply because I'm in favor of the subservient Palestinian narrative, which I've come to understand. And so my heart and my brain is with Palestine. And I have been accused of being anti-Semitic, because anytime you take the Palestinian side, then you're not just anti-Israel, but anti-Jewish. And Israel and Jewish people, they're not the same thing. So you have Israel, Zionism, and Judaism, and it gets very complex. So I've been accused of being anti-Semitic on more than one occasion, which is really disappointing to me because I don't consider myself that way. 3, develop and evaluate existing and potential policy proposals and strategies from the bottom up instead of the top down, in the interest of peace and prosperity for the people of Palestine, based on George Mitchell's 5 principles of peace, Northern Ireland, and the Middle East. So some of you may be familiar with the conflict that historically have been going on in Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom. And even though it's on the same island, it's separated from the Republic of Ireland, which is an independent nation state. And peace was brought there through the Good Friday Accords under the leadership of former Senator from Maine, George Mitchell. And so some people have suggested that his principles could bring peace to the Middle East. And these are his 5 principles. First, there is no such thing as a conflict that can't be ended. 2, second, need for a clear and determined policy not to yield to those willing to use violence. 3rd, willingness to compromise. 4th, implementation of agreements is as difficult and as important as reaching it. And 5th, peace will bring opportunity and hope. And then I listed the required texts. I already gave you this one. You know, this is a pretty substantial book, because this is a very complex part of the world. But, you know, it'd be great if you could get all the way through it, or use it selectively as a reference material. Because one of the books I use, but I don't require, but this is one of the things that I use, Palestine, a 4,000-year history. So from this perspective, Palestine has been there for 4,000 years. Israel has been there for 70 years. I have trouble understanding that there's no Palestinian people. The other one that you'll see on here is The Last Earth, Palestinian Story by Ramri Baroud, the collective history of the Palestinian people outside the dominant narrative, based on the true stories of individual Palestinians and their struggle to live as Palestinians in occupied Palestine and the diaspora. And I realize I'm running out of time, I apologize. And we can pick up with this on Wednesday. But that book reads more like a novel, even though it's nonfiction. But it's an attempt to explain Palestine, not by doing an academic approach like these other 2 books, but by relating the stories of individual Palestinians and what they have gone through as a result of the creation of Israel. So I apologize for taking so long on all this stuff, because I still got more stuff just on the syllabus. But this is a very complex part of the world. But if you come to understand it, and I hope you all will, it has relevance to Northern Ireland, to the United States, to Israel, to Russia. If it was just a study of one part of the world, that would be of interest alone. But this is a study of a part of the world that has connections to every other part of the world. And if you understand Palestine, to a great extent, you can understand other parts of the world, which is why I enjoy studying. So I hope you're as interested and excited as I am. We'll return to this back on Wednesday. And then please take a look at the syllabus. If you do have any of the books, please start reading them. And then I'm more than happy to talk because I love hearing myself talk, but I'm much more interested in what you say. And that's why even today I just stopped and asked you questions. Because I need to know what you know and I need to know what you don't know. That becomes as important as what you do know. And it seems like there's a lot we gotta know. So we need to get going as fast as we can. So let's see on Slow Wednesday.